presidencies of Truman and Eisenhower as far as domestic events and issues that are occurring under those said presidents. That being said, we're going to go ahead and start with issues occurring under Truman as he hails before Eisenhower. Okay, a few things we have going on. Obviously, with the unfortunate passing of FDR, Truman takes his presidency a bit earlier than he would normally. Okay, so that's an idea that you need to have. He takes his presidency as Roosevelt dies. He wasn't elected into his first office. He was the VP, and now he's the president. So he has big shoes to fill. And obviously, 1945, we're still involved with what?
World War II.
World War II. So he has some serious decisions to make as well. And his most important decision is probably going to be what? Dropping the atomic bomb. Okay? And we're going to talk about that as we look into foreign policy. As President Truman wanted to adapt many of the policies of the New Deal, and make sure you emphasize, the New Deal was President who?
Roosevelt.
FDR. That's his plan to jumpstart the economy and pull us out of the Great Depression, which he was very effective at. However, it also was due to the assistance of World War II. Now, that being said, Truman's version is the fair deal. Now, you're going to see here as we continue on in this chapter specifically, LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, and JFK will also have their own versions of this. Okay? So just know the deal mantra is going to keep reappearing. All right. In short, the post-war recession convinced enough Americans to vote for Republicans. The economy starts struggling. You instantly look to that main person in charge of the government, for the most part, and say, you know, not really working, time for change. So we have a congressional shift. Okay? Make sure you have that down there. This is in Congress, because notion of both houses here, Congress. Now that being said, if you can see that there's a majority of the other party in both houses of Congress, they are able to stop legislation hailing from the White House, which instantly is going to make most of these policies, despite veto being enacted by Truman, going the Republican direction. Okay? Goals and attempts of Truman to get progress made under his fair deal will be stopped, and Republicans will ultimately have the ability to overturn that veto. Okay? Which is what you guys were first able to see when President Obama hailed his first term and had a congressional majority of Democrats in the House and Senate. We're able to get through legislation really quick because if you're all in the same party and you have majority, pass, sign into law. That's how this works. Labor relations with Truman, rocky at times. Again, one of the big ideas you have to remember, this is a recession. When you are in a recession, including now, if you analyze the strength of the economy now, people start looking at the little things and be like, well, this is how we can save money. Labor is upset, we're demanding more wages, but you're also not producing either. Why should we pay you more, is the whole mindset we're taking here. Okay? Now, the United Mine Works are going to come back up to fruition as well. We're going on strike again. Who is the first president where we see interaction with the United Mine Workers? Our most important trust buster.
Theodore Roosevelt.
TR. Very good. So write him in there. We've seen interactions with the United Mine Workers before. That labor union, again, seeking unification and goals of the masses, positive. However, they're totally on strike. So that being said, government takeover of mines. You guys don't work. This is a natural resource. That's a huge idea too. Whereas other industries, they could just be abolished or occupied. This one will remove you entirely. The nation needs coal. Plain and simple. The nation needs iron to industrialize. If you're not going to work, we will find someone who will. Okay, labor's fortune took a turn for the worse. Taft-Hartley Act. This is ultimately the most aggressive piece of legislation for labor relations in our history. So I'm going to write that down. Most aggressive ledge in history. Okay, now that's for labor relations. Now you got to remember, that's most aggressive legislation in history when handling labor relations. Now let's analyze this, okay? Defined unfair labor practices as boycotts, meaning you refuse to buy or you refuse to produce, okay? Sympathy strikes and the closed shop required unions to adhere to a 60-day cooling-off period before workers could strike. Now that last portion, if you truly think about this, probably isn't that bad. A 60-day cooling-off period. For example, you get into some form of a quarrel with your best friend or maybe your girlfriend, boyfriend, And instead of just instantly going up and like, what are you talking about, and get really aggressive, some people advise you, take the day, relax, go for a jog, read a book, take your mind off it, then approach it tomorrow. Okay? When you're not aggressively upset. All right? That's the major idea there. Now, that's not that bad. However, union leaders required to swear they're not communists. Bam. Now, is that positive or negative? How about this? Let's look at it like this. You have three options. Positive, negative, or irrelevant. Well, now, why do we think it might be irrelevant?
I'm not sure. I think it's just unnecessary.
Unnecessary. Okay, what does it matter if they're communists or not? They're serving a job. However, what's going on during this time period?
Communism starting to take over.
The communism is spreading rapidly, specifically Asia and Europe, because of what? We are engaged with whom in what?
USSR.
With the Soviet Union in the...
States race. Or the
But that's all part of what?
Cold War.
Cold War. Very good. So write down this portion here should be irrelevant. However, we are engaged with these people in the Cold War. Okay? Which at the time, if you are remotely communist or believed to be communist, and that becomes public, life's over. Especially when Senator McCarthy's going to hear about it. Okay? Not a good time period. But at the same time, freedom of choice, freedom of alliance with whatever political party one should try to align themselves with, that should be irrelevant. We are the land of the free. However, if you entertain the idea of communism, how do we not know if you're a Soviet spy?
No.
Okay? You don't. And then people's freedoms start getting stepped on, and then it gets really nasty really fast. Okay. Truman pushed ahead of his own domestic agenda. Things that he will have success with. So these are Truman's successes as president. Okay? Regardless of partisan bloc. Housing Act 1949 budgeted $3 billion, which again, and especially when you hear about minimum wage here, you'll be just wowed by minimum wage at this time. $3 billion for slum clearance and low-rent housing. Okay? Now, people would instantly say, especially because I used the Detroit example, our largest city, why can't we do that now? We have issues with who owns the property, the intent of the property, etc., etc. It shouldn't be the government's role to come in and say, we're purchasing this land from you, wipe it out, and develop something else. There was a professor from Michigan State University a few years ago who is in charge of what is called the Brownfield Project. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Okay. With the whole intent of clearing slums and, depending on location, either establishing solar fields or wind turbines. Because three positive things. Number one, you're going to employ a lot of people to clear the slums and build those items. You're going to go ahead and remove the eyesores that are the slums that are existing during this time period. And you're going to create a great wealth of clean energy. However, it comes down to property ownership. Okay, if you're not willing to relinquish said property, it shouldn't be the government's role to come in and say, Miss Student, we're taking your house, you got to move. All right?
There should be a stretch on that. If it's just sitting there, and
If it's
nothing of
vacant or not,
importance,
yeah.
then they should be allowed.
I agree. Okay. Make sure you have this title, because the Minimum Wage Act of 1949 is going to amend the Fair Labor Standards Act, 1938, to increase minimum wage. Now, what do you guys think minimum wage is in 1938?
$3.45
Per hour.
$1.45.
Keep going down.
95 cents.
50 cents.
75 cents.
$1.15.
Keep going down, Raquel.
25 cents.
40 cents an hour.
Oh.
Is that a joke?
That is serious.
No
Okay.
way.
Now, but again, think of the cost of items, though. Like I said, that $3 billion looks a heck of a lot larger now. 40 cents an hour. Okay? Now, this is going to, 25 cents. It's increasing to 40 cents. Okay?
I forgot what it's
25 cents. It's increasing to 40 cents an hour. Now, analyzing how you live your life, could you exist on a quarter an hour?
No, how would they live,
Absolutely
though? How
not.
would they
It's hard
live?
enough
How
to
do
manage
they,
now.
how do they buy food with that?
But again, you have to think of the cost of items at the time as well.
So they're probably cheaper.
much,
right?
much cheaper. Like when Coca-Cola first came out, you could get a bottle of Coke for 5 cents.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
Okay.
Oh my
It
gosh.
absolutely
we're doing that
does.
now.
But if you think about this, okay, why might they have to increase?
Because
Because
items are starting to
prices
increase.
increase.
Because prices are increasing because what is also increasing?
Natural resources.
Resources.
Gas, oil,
When prices increase, usually something else is rising.
supply.
Our economy.
Demand.
Nope. Nope.
Ooh.
It's usually paired with unemployment though. Okay? Both of these items, unemployment and blank, were under 5% at the start.
Oh, inflation.
Inflation, very good. Why does this need to happen? Because recession equals inflation. Make sure you got that down. Okay? Like I said, this just blows your mind. A quarter an hour? For example, my mother, one of her first cars was I'm not sure the exact model, it was a sports car for GM. She paid cash, brand new, coming off of the plant. She designed it herself, color, interior, everything. $3,500. You might struggle to get a good used car for $3,500 now.
Yeah, man.
Okay? Anyways, Social Security Act 1950 extends coverage to self-employed and retirees given increased benefits. Now you're going to see this several times today as well as the next couple sections. Okay, Social Security is a huge issue. But again, we have all of these people paying into this. We must address the entire labor force. That being said, we're also going to go ahead and start address the civil rights issue. The most important idea here that one could argue with civil rights success under Truman is this one right here. Okay? Desegregated the government and armed forces. You hear of all of these positive things as FDR as a leader, and all these positive things as him as the commander-in-chief, yet he never did this.
Yeah.
Okay? You ever watched the movie The Tuskegee Airmen?
Oh, never
Or
heard
I
of
think
it.
it's Red Tails, something like that. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
About the only African American, and it's a solely African American air unit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's what we're looking at here. Now we're finally one team, America. Whereas before we're America and the miners. If you think about it, is how they were treated.
Yeah, scout.
Okay? Anyways, strong opposition. Now, the only thing that will block Truman from entertaining the idea of a third term, because there's no limit yet. FDR, there's no limit. We're going to go ahead and pass this. Now think about this. This amendment is passed through by a Congress that is predominantly Republican. This is brilliant. Okay? Not allowing that Democrat as president to entertain the idea of a third term. This gets them, quote, their guy in office. Okay? Positive or negative from stopping people from a third term or beyond? What do you guys think?
Positive.
Okay, I have situational and positive. So, Mr. Lillis, why do you think it depends?
Well, I mean, because if a president's doing real good and they have the economy on track or whatever, but they have to go out of office after their second term, that could hurt America rather than help it.
Absolutely. We'll use the example of FDR. Say he never had health issues. Okay? Look at how the New Deal, and again, with the assistance of Congress, because you can't just leave them in the dark. Look how the New Deal pulled our economy up. Look at his interactions in World War II. His handling of foreign policy with Churchill and even Stalin. If he never had health issues, who's to say, because a decent percentage of the population obviously loved him, that he could have maybe been president for another 2, maybe even 3 more terms?
Well,
Might have.
Same thing with Ronald Reagan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Loved and adored by some of the people. If he was doing great things, what would have kept stopping him?
Yeah, that's true.
It would ultimately come down to the people. Okay? But, on the other hand, what would stop a poor president with a poor agenda that somehow is just rallying the love and adoration of the people from continuing that as well?
But I mean, if he's doing bad stuff, the people will generally.
Yeah.
But again, it depends. But think about this though too. For the most recent game in basketball, Michigan versus Louisville. Some people rooted for Louisville just because they hate Michigan. That could be the same thing in an election.
So,
I'm going to vote this guy back in again because I just don't trust the competition.
True.
You know what I mean? That could keep coming. Anyways, let's keep rolling. This is the best stuff. Now, this was put out before the election was even over. Okay? If you notice the actions on his face here, Dewey defeats Truman. That didn't happen. Okay? And he got a hold of one of these papers. Chicago Daily Tribune kind of drops the ball here. Okay? It's like, for example, with your national titles and all these other things in sports, obviously, 2 of those things are mass-produced.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you're going to hand shirts and hats out to the people on the court. So obviously, even the losing team, that stuff was made, but that's destroyed or donated elsewhere around the nation, around the world. This was released, though. So that kind of makes the Chicago Daily Tribune look a little sketchy. Dwight Eisenhower. Okay. Republican president. Major idea there. Yeah, and this is major idea because he is the first repub since FDR started his first term. Okay. Now again, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a bad president, but it does mean his interactions with Congress and business will probably be slightly different. Supreme Allied Commander. That is an excellent title to carry with you in an election. I would think. Okay. The people know him. The people love him for his successfulness on the battlefield, organizing a multinational force in a global conflict. We know him, we know his success, so we know as Commander-in-Chief, he'll know what he's doing. He has military experience. Okay? Campaign Time for Change. Now, we're not New Deal or Fair Deal, but Time for Change, aptly so, because he's Republican. This last several terms we've had a Democrat in office. Cabinet selected wealthy advocates for business. Make sure you have that down. Wealthy advocates for business. That's a big idea. Because you can see right now how he's going to be handling labor unions, okay, how he's going to be interacting with corporate offices and corporate businesses, magnates at that level. Anyways, minimum wage. Now we're up to $1. Okay, last slide, we're at a quarter. Now, this is not an icon of extreme inflation. This is an icon of growing consumerism. Write that down. Okay? People are buying. And people understand, the government understands, to increase that purchasing, your purchasing power parity, you need more money. For example, say whatever you make hourly now doing the jobs you all do, it was increased by $3 an hour.
Oh my Lanta.
Holy Lanta. Yeah, we're going to buy a lot more stuff. It'd be great. Okay? Unfortunately, what usually occurs when wages increase? Prices increase. Okay? So eventually, after a period of a few years, it's just going to balance out. You're back to 75 cents an hour. But you feel better about yourself. Okay? Eisenhower's 2 terms in office, so we have an 8-year president here. Following steps are taken. 3 cabinet-level positions created. Now, this is rare because you have a Republican expanding government. However, he has an impetus behind his decision-making. He knows what he's doing. But nonetheless, you have a Republican in office expanding government. Usually, they tend to condense. Now, for example, when Reagan will become president, he's going to go ahead and try to eliminate the Department of Education. Because if you think about a cabinet-level position, obviously there's a member of cabinet, and then there are thousands of people underneath you handling at the state level, the municipal level, even the Clinton village level. Okay? That's a lot of employment. That's a lot of government wages. Social Security amended to include state and local government employees and farmers. So think about this. You could be the wealthiest farmer ever, agribusiness-wise, but until 1954, you're not putting anything into Social Security. You're not recognized by government for your retirement. Now you are. So you can instantly see he's going to rally support from the Democrats in the South. If you have someone who has just granted you, to an extent, of government assistance retirement, you're going to probably like them just a little bit more. All right? Later on, we're going to lower the age of women to 62 and 50 for the disabled. Okay? Now, some people still say, especially now, given our economic times and what we have going for us as a country, that at 62 you can't retire. I don't know that I'll be able to retire at 62. Yeah? And that's tough for me to comprehend. That's 30 plus years from now. Nonetheless, I love what I'm doing. But some people, if you have a very labor-intensive job, physical ailments, it's literally going to wear and tear your body down, so morale just continuously drops and drops and drops, and then you hear, you can't really even retire for another 10 years. what kind of quality worker might you become?
Not good.
It could possibly slump down because at that point you may be going through the motions just to get a paycheck until retirement. I don't know. National Defense Act, $1 billion. Again, right here, consider this, $1 an hour. $1 billion for education because of this. Soviet advances in aeronautics. Specifically, what was launched? Sputnik. Okay, we got to catch up. What's our first satellite?
Explorer 1.
Explorer 1. Very good. We need to catch up. Now, if you look at this, it's interesting that science and math make sense. Obviously, very engineering based. Language arts as well. Why might that be included? These two, it just absolutely makes sense. Why language arts? What do you guys think? Can anyone write a phenomenal speech and issue it to anyone at any given time?
No.
No. You have to have an understanding of literature, of rhetoric, of diction. You have to have an understanding. So if we have people at any government position spouting out publicly about their position on one thing or another, and it aggravates this group of people, it could get ugly fast. So we want to make sure that our politicians, our political masses as a whole, especially, and even to include those who are not involved in politics, are well versed in what they're saying. And that is flim-flamming at the mouth and getting themselves in trouble. Also with this, now make sure, as far as language arts, you have two things I want you to write down. USSR, civil rights. Okay? We have a lot of things going on. Foreign, obviously, the Cold War is a huge, monstrous issue that we are heavily engaged with and will be for decades. But that civil rights movement is tearing the nation at the seam domestically. Okay. Civil rights, once again, we're going with it. A few icons of progress. Huge, huge icons of progress here. Okay? We're going to go ahead with Brown v. Board of Education and eliminate the JCL. Okay? Separate is not equal. Separate and not equal. SNE. Okay? That's the major idea there. SNE. Separate's not equal. Plessy v. Ferguson, court ruled separate not equal and constitutional facilities are different and inherently unequal. Okay? These two cases right here define from 1954 and just beyond that civil rights movement. Arkansas, the Little Rock Nine is what I want you to have here. Pictured there, Little Rock Nine. Okay, the Little Rock Nine. Governor Orville Faubus sent the National Guard to turn away black students. And this is in the deep South, though, okay? Think about that. It has been accepted that you are allowed to attend public schools of multiracial approach. And your governor of that state is using the state military to prevent you. That's unacceptable. So the response from Eisenhower, he's going to go ahead and send the U.S. Army. Okay? You can restrict us. We're going to up the ante to guarantee the safety of the new registered students. Court decision Cooper v. Aaron, 1958, reiterates Brown case and the fundamental rights of the 14th Amendment. Now, segregation is going to go ahead and continue on. Rosa Parks, Henry Ford Museum. Notice the bus?
Yes.
There it is. Okay? You yourself maybe have sat in that exact seat when we went. I hope you did. Because right there it is. And now we're talking about it in class. But nonetheless, we have icons. We're hailing to the movement that will be called the Montgomery Bus Boycotts. Bus boycotts. Anyways, Montgomery Bus Boycotts, which we'll talk about with Martin Luther King right now. 26-year-old Baptist minister. Dr. Martin Luther King, successful nonviolent boycott Montgomery's buses. All you have to do is not ride them. Now, regardless of race, that's going to hurt that busing economy. Okay? The philosophy is nonviolence. Okay? It's also known as
why do they call him Dr. Martin Luther? Like doctor?
he does have a PhD.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Civil disobedience. Write that down. This is also called civil disobedience. In that you're not breaking the law if the law is unjust. Does that make sense? Okay, if that law is restricting your personal rights and freedoms, refusing to adhere to it is only making the most civil and societally appropriate decision. 1 year after that, Civil Rights Act 1957. Okay, a few positives here. Designed to enforce voting rights. A commission will be established to oversee and persecute those interfering with that amendment. Okay? 1960 Act strengthened to make it a federal crime, a felony. If you are attempting to restrict someone from the ability to participate in an election, or maybe even run for office, it is now a felony. Once you have a felony, it's with you for life. Okay? Another item in response to some rudimentary bomb attacks on churches and whatnot, we're also going to make it illegal to transport explosives across state lines. Okay? Now that being said, there are a few different films here that you guys can think of to define the civil rights movement. Do you guys have any? What do you guys think?
Well, movie?
Movies involving issues with civil rights.
The Help.
The Help, absolutely. Give us a few more.
42.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Help, 42. What else? It's a nice high school football one.
Oh,
Oh,
remember the Titans?
Remember the Titans. What else?
there's that one about that little girl. It's like Ruby or something.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
I don't.
Not sure the exact title.
Yeah.
Have any of you ever watched the movie
You touch a little bit of Forrest Gump.
A Time to Kill?
Oh, that
Matthew
sounds
McConaughey
really
and Samuel L.
familiar.
Jackson.
That sounds really familiar.
I'll tell you, it's rated R because of violence and language,
It's such a
but
good movie.
it defines the intensity of this era. Okay, so we're gonna write that down. And these are just if you ever want to watch them. A Time to Kill. Any others you guys can think of? How about The Individual, who's often compared directly to him? Another Denzel Washington film. Civil rights activist has a little bit more of a militant and interesting perspective.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X, very good.
Can Ali be one?
Oh yeah, Ali's a good
With Will Smith?
Yeah. Excellent. These are all movies that you guys could use to visualize this because we won't have time in class to show realistically any of them. And as the other student in class did say, Forrest Gump does touch on it as well. But you guys laugh about it. Look at how much history is in that movie.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's
And we're going
surprising
to
how
watch
much
portions of that after the AP test.
Right after the 13.
Any questions about what we covered today? Very good.
Like the third time I watched
I like when he calls from the